Jonathan Halevy fue el director de Shaare Zedek en Jerusalén, en Israel, un hospital de casi 1000 camas en la ciudad de Jerusalén, y él fue el encargado también de una etapa de crecimiento muy importante del hospital allá en Israel. Entonces en este momento nos va a hacer el favor de darnos una plática sobre el dilema ético en reproducción asistida e infertilidad. Jonathan, bevakasha.
Very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, here in Santa Fe, and those who are watching from home on Zoom. It's really my pleasure to give this lecture, and I'll give a short introduction. ART, which stands for Assisted Reproductive Technology, is an umbrella name for in vitro fertilization that is with us since 1978, with millions of babies born through this technology, and of PGD or PGT, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis or pre-implantation genetic testing. And these two procedures bring to our doorstep ethical dilemmas that previous generations of physicians who dealt with fertility did not have to cope with. These are really new ethical dilemmas. I believe that every society should respond to innovations in science, in medicine, in a socially responsible manner. We are facing this dilemma now with the new AI, with ChatGPT, that also brings to our doorstep major ethical dilemmas. In this lecture today, I would like to deal with the approach to these ethical dilemmas from a pure standpoint of medical ethics, also from the standpoint of the Israel regulatory system. Israel is a unique country in the way that it has only 9.5 million people, but it was founded on the ashes of the victims of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. And also it is not run by the Jewish law, it's a secular country, run by a secular law, but it has a lot of affiliation with the Jewish law. And in the Jewish law, one of the first commitments in the Old Testament is be fruitful and multiply. So the ethos of having children is very strong in Israel. And it's manifested by many regulations and law that enable the people free of charge to have children and to use assisted reproductive technology for those who have fertility problems. So much so that Israel is the only country in the world who will finance from public funding 2 children, not 2 cycles of IVF, 2 children. Every couple in Israel who has fertility problems is entitled to assisted reproductive technology that could be at a cost of tens of thousands of dollars free of charge. This regulation represents the ethos of the importance of having children. My hospital in Jerusalem, and you can see a picture of part of the hospital. This wooden lane building is our new cancer center, and you can see the main buildings. It's a 1,000-bed hospital, and it's represented here in Mexico, and the representatives are sitting in this hall. I visited ABC about 5 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, the medical director, but at that time you told me that you deliver here about 2,000 babies a year. We deliver in Shaare Zedek 22,000 babies. That also represents the ethos of having children in Israel, and this has bearing on our topic today, on the topic of the ethical Jewish law and Israeli law dilemmas in coping with ethical dilemmas that are brought to our doorstep through assisted reproductive technology. So all in all, I would say that there are 5 main problems that relate to IVF, and there are also problems that relate to PGD, which will come later. So the first problem is embryo dilution. Are we allowed to dilute? Let's say that a woman becomes spontaneously pregnant with quadruplet, 4 babies in a womb. It happens, very unusual. I don't know if there are gynecologists in the audience, but if there are, I'm sure that if you work enough years, you saw triplets and you saw quadruplets. In IVF, when IVF started in the late 70s and in the 80s, it was common to put back in the womb not 1 baby like it is today, but 2 or 3 babies, because the success rate was very low. Today's success rate is 40 to 50%, so we do put in the womb, at least in Israel, but I think it's most of the developed world, we put back only 1 baby. So the problem of embryo dilution almost does not exist, but it is interesting to deal. Is it allowed to dilute embryos? So let's look at the problems that it involves. So first of all, in order to perform IVF, you have to stimulate the ovary to produce, instead of 1 egg, 1 ovum per month, to produce altogether 10 to 20 ova, 10 to 20 eggs. And this stimulation may cause overstimulation with certain danger to the mother. So are we allowed to endanger the mother? So it's true that 40 years after IVF is with us, overstimulation that endangers the mother's life is very uncommon. But it is still with us, so there is a risk of overstimulation, and the overstimulation, I'm sorry, I think we jumped. We'll get to the overstimulation, we jump 1 slide. So first of all, about embryo dilution. Catholicism bans absolutely embryo dilution, because according to Catholicism, life starts when the sperm meets the egg. According to the Jewish law, life actually starts in the womb only after 40 days of embryonal life. Until 40 days of embryonal life, the embryo is considered absolutely non-viable. And that's why elimination of an embryo before the 24th week of gestation, which is the border of viability, is allowed in the case of quadruplets, because we don't want to endanger the woman. And the evidence in the literature shows that when you go from 4 babies in the womb to 3 babies in the womb, the danger to the mother and babies go down steeply. That's why Jewish law allows eliminated 1 embryo out of 4 in the case of quadruplets. Which one should be eliminated? If they all look the same, it should be random. But if one of the embryos shows some disease, ultrasonographic problems, then you dilute the sick embryo. So this is interesting to compare the approach of Catholicism and the approach of Judaism, where we don't want to endanger the mother, and if we have evidence in the literature that danger goes steeply when you go from 4 to 3, you are allowed to dilute. The second problem in the ethical dilemmas that assisted reproductive technology brings to our doorstep is the limitation of mother age. Are we allowed to limit the age? You know, in principle, you can give birth today to IVF technology even at the age of 60, because you can get an ovum donation. You don't produce your own ova at the age of 60 or at the age of 50, usually. 50 is the average age in Israel of menopause, but you can get an ovum donation. You can get the sperm from your husband, or in more open societies from your meaningful companion, or from a donor, and actually you can have a baby. So ethically, is it permissible, is it allowed to limit the age of the mother? So first of all, risk of overstimulation increases with age, and chance of successful pregnancy decreases with age. So these are two issues that preach for limiting the age of the mother. Then there is another ethical issue, the interest of the child that is born to a 60-year-old mother. I mean, we are not acting in the best interest of the child if we are enabling fertility and IVF at the age of 60. So how should it be? So the regulation in Israel, it was changed from 52 to 54, that mothers age up to 54 are not limited. And in vitro fertilization will be financed by the government until this age, and it again represents the ethos of how important it is to bring children to the world, how important it is to be fruitful and multiply according to the Old Testament, and that's why the Israeli regulation allows quite high age, not 60, but up to 54, and even finance it. According to Jewish law, there is no limit. Those of you who are familiar with the Bible, you know that Sarah, our foremother, gave birth at the age of 90. But we are all not sure that the biblical ages, that the biblical year are equivalent to the years that we count today, because it's inconceivable today with the physiology that we are aware of today that a 90-year-old will give birth. But according to Jewish law, there is no limit to the age of the mother, and you can see the Israeli regulation. What about these ethical dilemmas, the risk of overstimulation and the interest of the child? That's why it's limited to 54. I believe that a couple who got married late or were unsuccessful and they reached the age of early 50s, and then we have a technology to enable them to bring a baby to the world, I believe that we are acting in the best interest of this baby, even if his parents will be in their early 50s when they give birth. To go over that sound a little bit exaggerated, and in the name of the interest of the child that would be born, we limit it to 54. The next ethical dilemma is surrogacy. So when do we use surrogacy? We use surrogacy in 1 to 1 million cases where a woman is born without womb. It's called the Mayer-Rokitansky syndrome. By the way, naming syndromes, there are young physicians here. You know, people enter history by names. So everybody knows, every gynecologist knows the name Mayer-Rokitansky. But there were two other partners to description of this syndrome. One of them was named Koster, and the other one was named Hauser. So in fairness to history and to historical accuracy, we should call it the Mayer-Rokitansky-Koster-Hauser syndrome. But the word Rokitansky is more prominent. So if a woman is born without womb, or in the more frequent case that a woman is born with severe malformation of the uterus, and the uterus cannot carry a baby, the only solution is surrogacy. Also, there are cases where women had hysterectomy for various reasons and got married after they had hysterectomy. So it's not so uncommon to need a surrogate motherhood. The question is, what are the ethical dilemmas involved with surrogacy, and how do we deal with them in Israel, in the Jewish law, and in the general ethics? So first of all, is payment to the surrogate mother ethical? So it is considered ethical if, she carries the baby for 9 months, if you cover her cost and losses in work. But it calls for exploitation, where surrogate mothers will be only the poor if you pay sums that will turn the surrogate mother will change significantly her and her husband financial situation. So that's why it is considered ethical to give a certain sum of money. We are talking about few tens of thousands of American dollars. It will not turn the financial situation. It will not enable the couple to buy a house, but it will cover the cost, the loss of working days that she sustains during pregnancy. Now there is another ethical dilemma, the emotional aspect of handing over the newborn. And as you see at the bottom of this slide, who is the mother? Who is the legal mother? Who is the ethical mother, the emotional mother? The surrogate mother who carries the baby 9 months in a womb, or the genetic mother who gave the ovum in order for the surrogate mother to carry the baby. So the emotional aspect is important, but I must say that in Israel, most of the surrogate mothers are mothers who volunteer. And research shows that altruism is a dominant motive of the surrogate mother. It's very important to conduct such research because we really don't want to exploit the poor and to encourage them to offer the wombs for surrogacy in order to improve their financial situation. It's not the case in the US until the law was changed in Israel for homosexual couples, and we will get to the ethical dilemmas that involve fertility among homosexual couples, mainly male homosexuals. But before the law was changed, many homosexual couples in Israel were traveling to the States in order to produce a baby from an ovum donation from an American mother and from a surrogate mother that will carry the baby. The total cost was $150,000, and in certain states in the US, many women, in order to improve their financial situation, will suggest themselves for surrogacy to be surrogate mothers. Ovum donation or artificial insemination to the surrogate mother, in case of the couple who wants the surrogacy cannot produce a sperm or cannot produce, Yona, it disturbs me, Yona, it's difficult for me when you speak. I speak without paper and it cuts my throat. So when the couple cannot produce a sperm, the male factor, or the woman cannot produce an ovum, and she needs not only a surrogate mother, but she also needs another woman to donate the egg, the situation even becomes more complicated. But still, in Israel, there is a law of surrogacy. And the law of surrogacy was enacted for the first time back in 1996, more than 25 years ago. And that was at the beginning only for infertile couples, the case of Rokitansky syndrome, severe malformations of the womb that the woman was born with, or if she had hysterectomy before she got married. So to heterosexual couple, the law enabled it, and there is a law that is called the contract for carrying embryos that enable to draw a contract between the infertile couple to the mother who carries the baby in her womb that guarantees various rules that will govern it after very thorough checkup of the health of the woman. We usually take women who already had one child, preferably unmarried or divorced, but not necessarily, already prove that they can have successful pregnancy, they bore at least one child, and even raised it. That's the women that we do. And the development of society in general and the society in Israel is very, very tempting to discuss, because few years after the first contract of carrying embryos was formed in Israel, single mothers who could not have a husband also were allowed to have surrogacy arrangement. And last year, the Supreme Court, we'll get to it in another side, the Supreme Court in Israel even ruled that homosexual couples, two males who are in contact, even though the Israeli law does not recognize marriage between homosexual persons, but it does recognize common law couple, common law spouse, and it even did give them rights. So imagine that Israel is so liberal that according to the national health insurance law in Israel, the HMOs, the medical insurers, have to finance. And remember, homosexual couple, they need ovum donation and they need surrogacy. If they are males, if you are talking about gay males, they don't have ovum, of course, they need ovum donation and they need surrogacy. And this is allowed in Israel since last year, not according to the law, but according to the Supreme Court ruling when a homosexual couple appealed to court and asked them, why do we have to pay $150,000 in the States? We would like to make it in Israel, and to have surrogacy in Israel, and to have ovum donation in Israel. So it is allowed now, according to the Israeli law, surrogacy. It's very important ethically to do research and to prove that altruism is the dominant motive of the surrogate mother. This research guarantees that there will be no exploitation, and not only very poor mothers will offer the womb for surrogacy. And the Jewish law regarding surrogacy is that it is allowed. Again, this ethos of be fruitful and multiply, although these laws are completely new, this technology is completely new, and halachic Jewish law rulers of previous generations were not aware of it at all. The modern Jewish law rulers ruled that surrogacy is allowed. Another ethical question is, who is the mother? Who is the mother? Who is the mother of this baby? The biological mother that gave the genetics to the baby, because in most cases of surrogacy, it's an infertile couple that has mechanical problems in the womb, hysterectomy, but they have sperm, the male has sperm, and the female have an ovum. So is the biological mother who gave the ovum, and I'm not talking about ovum donation, I'm talking about the more usual case where both couples have a mechanical problem, no womb, but they have ovary, there is an egg, and there is sperm. So is the biological mother who gave the genetics to the child the mother? Or if you carry a baby for 9 months, and as a male, I feel that I have no right to offer an opinion on that. Only women who already bore children for 9 months know what it takes to be pregnant for 9 months, to deliver a baby, and the bonding that is creating during these 9 months with the embryo in the womb and the mother. So it's not so simple to come and say, of course the biological mother, the one who is the genetic mother, should be the mother. So it's interesting because Jewish law deals with it, and most of the Jewish law scholars consider the genetic mother, though the one who gave, the couple who gave the sperm and the ovum, to be the mother, and not the one who is pregnant. There is only 1 or 2 scholars who think differently. They do think that these 9 months and the bonding make her the mother, but in any case, the law of surrogacy in Israel regulates this legal relationship, and the genetic mother is the mother. And even if the couple needed an ovum donation from another, it should never be the surrogate mother who carries the baby in the womb who should give her egg. It should be a third one, like in the case of homosexual couples, and still the mother will be the mother that has her or her husband's genes in the baby. It's the couple, and this is regulated by the law of surrogacy in Israel. So you can see how complicated are the ethical, legal, and social dilemmas that modern assisted reproductive technology brings to our doorstep. So, ovum donation. Ovum donation, in order for a woman to donate an egg, to donate an ovum, again, her ovary has to be stimulated. So this minimal risk of overstimulation should be taken into consideration because we are doing it to a healthy woman who volunteers to give her egg. The ethical dilemma is solved in Israel because 99% of those who give ovum donation are women who have to go themselves in vitro fertilization technique. And as we said, when a woman undergoes IVF procedure, she has 10 or 20 eggs in the refrigerator. Only 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 will be used to produce her children. So the question is being asked, what is done with the excess of eggs? And I can tell you, and I know that if there are fertility people in the audience, they know it. The world, the developed world, where in vitro fertilization technology is being practiced, I'm sure that in this hospital as well, there are tens of millions of frozen embryos whose parents are already in their 60s and maybe even 70s, because IVF is 45 years with us, since 1978. So some of these mothers, and they will never use these babies. Are we allowed to use these frozen ova or frozen embryos? There are frozen ova, millions of frozen ova, in order to donate it. And the answer is that we are not even endangering the woman, because anyway she had to have IVF. So with her consent, we can use these eggs for donation to mothers who cannot produce eggs. And that's the answer to it, and it's very commonly done in Israel. There is another ethical dilemma here. Are we allowed to use these frozen embryos that are rich with stem cells? And I'm sure that this medical audience knows the potential that many researchers see in stem cell research. Are we allowed to use these babies who will never be used in the womb of their mother because she already had the number of children that she wanted? So if there is a consent and the couple say, do whatever you want with these embryos, are we allowed to do it? By the law, by the religious approach, by ethical approach? It's a very interesting question, and here again, Christianity and Judaism, and when I say Christianity I mean mainly Catholicism, and Judaism have different views. According to Catholicism, you're not allowed to do research on stem cells on fertilized frozen embryos, because they are considered human beings, because according to Catholicism, as I said, life starts when the sperm meets the egg. So you cannot use it. So much so that when President Bush was the president, the young Bush in the US, and he is an evangelist, he stopped all research money from federal sources to do stem cell research on frozen embryos. The Jewish law approach is completely different. As I said at the beginning of this lecture, the embryo is not considered viable until the age of 40 days of embryonal life. But again, if he is 40 days old in the natural womb or in the surrogate womb, you are not allowed to abort it according to Judaism, because he has the potential. If you don't touch him, he will be a human being. But if he is frozen in the test tube, in the refrigerator, with deep nitrogen freezing, you are allowed to do whatever you want. I remember my meeting with a very leading Jewish law ruler, who was at that time already in his 90s, and I explained to him what I explained to you, and I asked him, Rabbi, can we do stem cell research on that? He said, you can do whatever you want if you have the consent of the owners of this embryo, his parents. You can throw it away, you can do stem cell research, and these embryos are very rich. These blastocysts have 8 or 16 or 32 stem cells. and some of them are healthy babies, some of them are sick with congenital disorder, which enables you to do stem cells to solve the problems and to develop medication against these diseases. So it's an ethical dilemma, and according to the Jewish law, it's allowed. According to Christianity, it is not allowed. And about organ donation, again, there is a risk of exploitation if the donor is being paid. Israel has an egg donation law where it is heavily regulated. I mean, the donor of the ovum has to be at a certain age, usually between 22 to 32. She will have a psychological assessment. There is a national registry because we don't want this baby to marry his brother or his sister. So there is a registry who gave the ovum. She doesn't have to identify herself unless the donor and the recipient agree to meet each other. If not, she will be unidentified, but she will be written down on a national registry in Israel in order to know who is the biological mother of this baby that will be born to an infertile couple with assisted reproductive technology. So you see how interesting are these dilemmas and how they are solved by different religions in different countries. And then homosexual couple, we already discussed it. So it depends on societal view on homosexual marriages and its legal standing. And in Israel, marriage between homosexuals is not recognized as marriage. It is recognized as a common law couple. They are known in the public to live together, but this was enough for the Israeli Supreme Court to rule that the HMOs, the medical insurers, have to finance the ovum donation and the surrogacy in order for every gay couple in Israel to be able to materialize what I consider basic rights of every human being, the right for love and the right for parenthood. And I believe this is a very advanced ruling. The government was not hasty in adopting it because the religious parties in Israel oppose it, because according to Jewish law, as you can see, there is an explicit ban by Jewish law. Homosexuality is forbidden according to Jewish law. So there is no chance that a government who has religious parties in it will approve. But in Israel, it's enough that the Supreme Court, and those of you who read papers about Israel, you know that this is the very essence of public debate in Israel today, if to limit the authority of the Supreme Court actually to change laws or to do such a ruling that will bind all medical insurers in Israel when there is a gay couple who wants to be parents to finance it. I think it's a very advanced ruling, and despite the fact that the government does not recognize marriage between homosexuals, they can still materialize the basic aspiration of every couple, heterosexual, single mothers who did not have a husband, will